I've been clear about the situation for a while on this show, which is that we're not going to solve this current crisis that we're living in through electoral politics. It's just not going to happen. 60 million people unemployed, have no income, millions more lost hours and lost wages because of the coronavirus. 40% of all small businesses going to close permanently. 40 million people are about to be evicted. And there's this fantasy floating around on the left saying, oh man, we didn't get them this time. Guess we're just going to have to wait a few election cycles, and then progressives something going to have a supermajority in Congress, the Senate, and they're going to have the White House. Then we'll actually be able to help people. That is not an option. All those people right now, those 60 million people with no job and no income, the 40 million people about to be evicted, time's up. They don't have the luxury of waiting around a couple election cycles to maybe fix this thing electorally. They need help right now. So direct action, public pressure campaigns are the only way to get policies to actually bail out the American people right now. That being said, I've acknowledged that electoral politics will become more of a factor later on down the road, because it is just not feasible to get millions of people out in the street anytime you need a single policy passed from the government. That's just ridiculous. So of course we need to eventually have politicians who actually represent the people running the government at some point. So, but what is crystal clear to me is that is not going to happen inside the Democratic Party. This party is as hostile to workers and the working class, and all of our preferred policy positions, they are as hostile to them as the Republicans are. Joe Biden is already bragging about bringing in, quote, moderates, centrist Republicans into his administration. We already know for a fact that he's getting economic advice from Larry Summers. Chief neoliberal architect Larry Summers. Goon, bagman for the rich in Wall Street, Larry Summers. That's who's giving Joe Biden all his economic advice. Joe Biden's already said he'd veto Medicare for all, even if it passes Congress in the middle of an unprecedented pandemic. The rest of the leadership in the Democratic Party is just as opposed to the left as Joe Biden. It's been Nancy Pelosi who's been blocking Medicare for all and UBI for coming up for a vote on the floor of the House for this entire crisis. For 8 months now, she has on purpose blocked those policies from being voted on. As expected, you already have the corporate Democrats in the House who are coming now trying to blame the left, trying to blame progressives running on Medicare for all as the reason why the Democrats shit the bed this election and didn't get the Senate and lost seats in the House and barely beat Donald Trump. And this is after the so-called elected progressives like Bernie Sanders and AOC, they all rolled over. They did what everybody in the party asked them to do. They shilled for Joe Biden, lied to their base for Joe Biden, pretended like he was going to be FDR. They did everything that they wanted to do. They didn't criticize the Democratic Party for the 8 months of this crisis because, we can't say anything bad about the Democrats because that might hurt us in the election. So they've been quiet for 8 months while the Democrats have shit the bed and gotten absolutely no policies to bail out the American people during this entire crisis. These quote elected progressives have done everything the corporate Democrats want, and still they treat them like the redheaded stepchild. So I don't know how much more people need to see before they just finally get it through their thick heads. The Democratic Party is a graveyard for any type of left movement in this country. Their top priority above everything, they were willing to lose to Donald Trump this election if it meant making sure Bernie Sanders didn't get the nominee. That's how much they are against the left and left policies. They were willing to lose, outright steal the nomination from Bernie Sanders, knowing that would cost them the election. They were willing to do that because their top priority isn't, quote, fighting fascism. It's not beating the Republicans. Their top priority, one, serving the donors and blocking any left policies. And those things are basically interchangeable because you can't serve the donors and do left policies. So Jimmy Dore is the most prominent person in left new media who's been pushing for an exit of the Democratic Party, who's been pushing for a third party for the left to get behind. And he had Nick Brana on his show again. Nick Brana is one of the co-founders for Movement for a People's Party. And they had this discussion post-election about what the strategy for the left should be going forward. Now that we've cemented at least another 8 years, maybe even 12 years of neoliberal rule in the Democratic Party. And the two of them were making a rock solid case as to why really a third party is the only option for us electorally at this point. And they really did bust up one of the biggest myths that people, or excuses that people like to throw out for why they won't get behind a third party. They busted it up in short order, and they did it very well. So I have a clip from that video. I'm going to show that to you guys. But first, you guys already know the deal. I'd like to make this show my main thing. In order to do that, it needs to be sustainable. So I have links to my Patreon account in the About page of my YouTube channel. Also, if you want to do a one-time contribution, I have a link to my PayPal in the About page of my YouTube channel. And I'm also doing this partnership with this company called Mask Up, where if you click the link that's in my About page on the YouTube channel and you go to their website and make a purchase, I get a 20% commission from your purchase. So it doesn't cost you anything extra. They sell reusable cloth masks. They're about $17, and whatever your purchase is, I'll get 20% commission at the end of it. Now, back to the story. So I have the clip. It's longer than most clips I would show you. It's about 4 minutes, but it is definitely an eye-opening 4 minutes, and you'll get a lot from this. So I'm gonna show you the clip, then we'll come back and break it down.
The DNC, there's the pharmaceutical lobbyists. There's like Aetna, there's Google lobbyists, there's, the tech companies, there's the banks, there's military industrial. They all have their lobbyists. And then these people get together and they make decisions, and they run this political party. And then the rest of us kind of like scratch our heads and think like, why didn't that result in like anything that supports working people? It's because it's a bunch of fucking lobbyists who are getting together and making the decisions for, of course, they're just running the country. They're running the country from those political parties. And this is, the Democratic Party, in addition to the Republican Party. There's like 100 lobbyists on the DNC, and that's not even counting the consultants. So it's incredibly corrupt. And, this is only scratching the surface of the shenanigans that goes on, and like the structural control, trying to take over the Democratic Party structurally. It's like trying to take over like Walmart,
Yeah.
It's like it doesn't have the democratic institutional mechanisms in the institution to be able to take it over. It's literally like it's not possible.
So
the chair is elected by the DNC members. It's not elected by the membership.
That's exactly right. That's a great point. And I'll just tell you here on a local level. So here I live in California. We have a supermajority in the legislature Democrat. We have a Democratic governor. I have a Democratic mayor. I have a Democratic city council. We don't have anything in California. It's the 5th largest economy in the world. We don't have Medicare for a while. We don't have student debt relief. I got a governor issuing 32 fracking permits this year alone. We got people sleeping under every goddamn bridge in this fucking state. 5th largest economy in the world. We have a bigger economy than Russia. Russia has Medicare for all. We don't in California. This is supermajority Democrat run every fucking position in government in California, and this place is a shithole. So my point being is this is a fool's errand to keep voting Democrat to think anything's going to change. We did it in California. We have every Democrat in every position in government, and we're still not getting anything we want. It's not happening. The Democratic Party is 100% corrupt party. You're just a jackass if you think anything ever. Look at goddamn California. What does Bernie say about California? He doesn't ever mention. I'll tell you this. He told us to take over the Democratic Party in California in 2016. Okay, so in 2017, we came out. Everybody in California voted to progressives came out, urged on by Bernie, to take over the Democratic Party inside California. We did it. Guess what? They have super delegates in California too. They overrode the will of the people, and we got fucked again. So you're exactly right. There is no democratic mechanisms for us to take over the goddamn Democratic Party. It doesn't exist. Yeah. That's a fool's errand. So this and these people. So let me ask you real quick. We have to go. Tell me about ballot access, because everybody says that a third party you can't do it because ballot access, the laws are against you, and you just can't do it. Somehow taking over the Democratic Party requires less effort than it does to start a viable third party. That's their fucking thinking, Nick. I have no idea how they come up with that. That is fucking nuts. That somehow it takes less of an effort to start to take over the Democratic Party than it does a third party. So how do we do this now? How do we start this third party? What do we do?
Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to run in the midterms, and we're going to run for president in 2024. And we're going to get on the ballot in all 50 states as the People's Party, and we're going to begin in December. That's when the first state is coming up in Maine. And ballot access is like the rules go state by state. And so in most states, you have to collect a certain amount of signatures, something like 1,000 or sometimes 10,000 signatures to get on the ballot in that state. In other states, there's a smaller percent. That's about 30 states where you have to collect signatures. In another 9 states, you have to register a certain number of people to the party. So that's like California, for example. In California, you have to register about 65,000 people to the party. Piece of cake. Okay. In Maine, you have to register 5,000 people to the party. Again, piece of cake. So this is not insurmountable whatsoever. When you add it all up, it comes out to about 1,000 people who you have to collect signatures from in order to get on the ballot in all 50 states. And to put that in perspective, there have been ballot initiatives in single states in the U.S. like recently, like the Felons Restorations Voting Restoration Act in Florida. That was 1.4 million signatures in one state. It's like the idea that we cannot collect this is that the Green Party has done it. The Libertarian Party does it. The Green Party in 2016, they got on 45 state ballots, and they had 3 write-in states, And then the Libertarian Party in 2016 and 2020, they had full ballot access every state.
So the first point that Nick Brana was making at the very beginning of this video was brilliant, because it gives people a different way of a more realistic way of viewing what the Democratic Party is. And he says that it's like a fantasy to think you're going to take over the Democratic Party. It is a corporate institution. And he compares it to trying to take over Walmart. You can't do that. That's not how it is structured. And similar with the Democratic Party, it is structured in a way so that the corporations and their lobbyists have final say over what happens in the DNC, what happens in the Democratic Party. But the part that stood out to me the most was when they actually got to the details about what it's going to take going forward to create a third party or to build up this movement for a People's Party, and what it's going to take to run candidates in all 50 states. And this is the part where a lot of people on the left, this is where they shut their brains off and just start mindlessly repeating propaganda about why a third party can't happen. Oh, the ballot access. Oh, we can't get ballot access in all 50 states. That's impossible. So, of course, we're just going to have to keep running in this Democratic Party, this institution that is entirely hostile to our ideology. And priority number 1 for them is serving corporations and squashing the left. But even though that's the case, it's going to be easier to try to take over that party than to try to get ballot access in all 50 states. This is the argument that a lot of people, prominent people on the left, have been making for years now. But when you actually look into it, what it would actually take to get ballot access, that's a very flimsy, shitty excuse. And honestly, if you think what Nick Brana described right there is too hard, and that's your your main reason for not supporting a third party is ballot access, then either you're misinformed and you don't know what you're talking about, or that is just sheer laziness. You mean to tell me you can't go around the country and in one state get 5,000 signatures to get ballot access in that state, or in another state get 10,000 signatures to get ballot access in that state, or in another state get 1,000 signatures for ballot access? That doesn't seem like an outlandish obstacle that's too hard for people to overcome, especially with an organization like Movement for a People's Party, because they have a lot of prominent lefties backing them. Cornel West, Jimmy Dore, you remember the people that were speaking at the convention a couple months ago, Chris Hedges. And then when you think about how much of an impact left new media would have in getting people out to volunteer and sign up for Movement for a People's Party, getting ballot access is not an impossible task. So for anybody who was on the fence about leaving the Democratic Party and supporting a third party, and ballot access is your main excuse, and I've seen a lot of people in my comment section where that's the case, I hope this completely blows up that excuse for you and opens your eyes and makes you see that, okay, maybe it isn't impossible to make a viable third party in this country. And I'm not here trying to make it seem like, oh, third party is just going to be a piece of cake and barely any work. No, it's going to be a lot of work. It's going to be arguably the hardest thing the left's done in this country in the last 40 years, maybe even longer than that. But what is clear to me now is that's going to be a lot easier than trying to take over the Democratic Party, because that's been a complete, utter failure. Objectively has been a complete and utter failure up to this point. This video got me thinking a lot, and it made me think about some of the huge problems with trying to take over the Democratic Party and why that is just not an option anymore at this point. So the first problem with the left still trying to take over the Democratic Party after everything we know, after all we've seen in 2020, everything you do would be in the confines of the Democratic Party, and the entire party apparatus is working against you at all times. In elections, in primaries, it sounds even crazy to say this out loud, but technically, the Democratic Party, the DNC, the DCCC, all of these organizations, they're supposed to be neutral in primaries. And they aren't supposed to pick sides. They aren't supposed to tip the scales in favor of one candidate over the other. Technically, that's how it's supposed to operate. Now, we know for a fact that's not how it operates. Time and time again, this has been proven. Biggest example, when they got caught in broad daylight rigging the primary against Bernie Sanders for their preferred corporatist neoliberal candidate, Hillary Clinton. The party apparatus will just flat out make up rules to undermine the left in elections. You remember the DCCC's completely bullshit rule that they made after the midterms, where they said, okay, anybody who challenges an incumbent Democrat and you hire any third party contractor that also does political work for the Democratic Party, well, they would be blacklisted and they will no longer get any contracts from the Democratic Party. So they'll just make up shit like that. And then when it's convenient for them, like when Nancy Pelosi wanted to endorse Kennedy, who was challenging an incumbent Democrat, oh, well, then that's when the rules don't really apply and whatever, we'll make all these excuses and the rules apply for you, but not for the corporate Democrats. So the Democrats will outright cheat you in the primaries every time they get the chance. And it's even more nefarious and insidious because, like I said, they're supposed to be neutral. So essentially, it's like every game you play with the Democrats, you have a dirty ref. The other giant problem that I've heard nobody discuss is when you continue this fool's errand of trying to take over the Democratic Party and you keep running candidates and recruiting candidates and recruiting lefties to sign up and register as Democrats and vote for the Democratic politicians. When you're doing that, you're feeding the machine. You make it easier for them to co-opt what are supposed to be outsider politicians. Look at what happened with the Justice Democrats. They ran as all these outsiders. Yeah, they did challenge some corporate Democrats and what have you. But as soon as they get in, all of the pressure that they face is making them conform to the corporate institution that they just agreed to be a part of. From the funding, the leadership, the entire infrastructure, the way it's set up, it is meant to protect corporate interests. So now you just put somebody in there thinking that they're just going to completely flip it on its head. But in reality, what ends up happening is what happened with other Justice Democrats. They buckle, they cave, and in short order, you can't really tell them apart from the rest of the Democratic caucus. Even worse part is then they use those co-opted politicians like AOC and Bernie Sanders. They use their popularity to sheep herd the left into the corporatist neoliberal Democratic Party. All the popularity you gain, all the voters you bring into the process and that you register will automatically be used to prop up neoliberalism and to provide cover for their shitty policies. Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, they can't bring socialists and commies and democratic socialists, social democrats. Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, the rest of Democratic leadership, they can't bring them into the party. But you know who can? AOC and Bernie Sanders. Because when you have figures like AOC and Bernie Sanders in the party, it gives the impression that there is some chance that the Democratic Party is going to pass policies like Medicare for All or like UBI or whatever, even though we know that's not going to happen. Just the fact that you have these so-called elected progressives in the Democratic Party, it lets the party save face. Because honestly, this is a controversial take, but I don't care. If Justice Democrats never happened and the only figures in the Democratic Party were, like I said, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Steny Hoyer, all of Dianne Feinstein, all of these 80-year-old corporatist neoliberals, I think people would have, a long time ago, they would have realized what the Democratic Party actually is. And that there just really is no debate here. It's just Republicans with a D next to their name. People would be able to see the party for how out of touch they are. And maybe there would have been a bigger push, a bigger movement for a third party to find something that represents regular people. So I think this is a very interesting discussion to have. I think it's important to have it now. We're doing an autopsy of the Democratic Party. We're doing an autopsy of our strategy and trying to figure out where we go from here. And I don't want it to be the default position for people in the left that, oh, we're stuck in the party and we're just going to have to keep doing this, stay on this never-ending cycle for the rest of eternity and put up this little fake opposition and maybe, hopefully, have a chance at the left taking control of the party in 20 years, 30 years, or whatever. Like, I don't want that to be the default position. Let's actually have it out. Anybody who's still trying to make the argument to stay in the Democratic Party, make your case. Actually explain why it is less of an uphill battle to take over the Democratic Party than it is to start a third party. And the ballot access excuse, that's kind of bullshit.